right. Hi, everyone. I'm Erica Clancy. I am a project manager at Excellent Research. Thank you to everyone who's just tuning in to join us and for those who've been with us throughout the day. It's been a really great conference so far and excited to have this next. Before we get started, I just want to give a reminder of the ground rules. Please keep in mind that we're at the mercy of the technology here. We're all working from home and getting used to that and learning how to use all these different platforms. So please bear with us if any glitches occur. We are recording these sessions, so if you miss anything, we are going to be posting these so you can tune in and get anything that you may have missed. Please remember to be respectful to everyone, presenters and attendees alike. We're all taking the time out of our days to join in, so just be respectful. But we do still want you to keep engage with each other, virtually connect and network. You can send questions through the Q&A function of Zoom, and you can also use the hashtag QVIC2020 on Twitter and LinkedIn to engage with us and each other throughout the conference. So still using this as a great opportunity to stay connected and network with each other. So now I'm going to hand it off to Mona. She is the founder of Motivate Design. She's going to be talking to us about me over we, why we hoard toilet paper, which is really relevant at a time like this. So with that, Mona, thanks so much for joining, and the floor is yours.
Thank you very much. So I'll go ahead and share my screen. Hi, everyone. It's really nice. Oh, you have to stop sharing, I guess. And then, yes. Oh, goodness. Give me a second to organize, share, and let me pull this up. All right. So hopefully you can see that. We good?
Yep, we're good.
Okay, awesome. So I thought I'd start with this story, a personal story, and how I got into thinking about this particular question. I'll take you through the methodology that we use, which is different than what you are maybe typically used to. It's a form of qualitative research that focuses on conversations, and we ran only five, for this study that I'm going to be presenting to you today, mainly because I wanted to show you what you can learn with five. It's just like a taste of a finding, if you will, and then we'll talk about what we typically do with things like this and with qualitative research samples that are so small. Of course, we validate. So we'll talk about all of that in this time, and then I'm really hoping to spend a good chunk of this in Q&A. So if you have questions, please keep them coming on the chat. It can be about the method, about the findings, about the story that I'm about to tell you, whatever you want, and I'm happy to answer those. So I'm going to take you back to March 13th. Can't believe how much time has passed, right, between now and then, about a month ago. My husband and I went out and were on our way back home. And this Fulton Street, Duane Reade was open. And so I walked in, I needed to get soap or something like that. And I saw that the entire shelf was full of toilet paper. And I remember this feeling, you know, we had, I don't know, maybe 12 rolls of toilet paper at home. I hadn't gone out and bought any more, but I was hearing all of the hype around buying it. And, you know, people were telling me they couldn't find soap, they couldn't find hand sanitizer. And so I see this mecca of toilet paper. And immediately I felt like a gut level and a heart level, like clenching. And it was this weird feeling of like, I need to buy that. I need to buy that right now. And my brain wasn't necessarily working at this time. You know, my brain is thinking, I have 12 rolls of toilet paper at home. Why would I need to buy more? But it was like my body, my fight or flight that was telling me, I need to get this. And I need to buy all of this, like every single one of these things, and take it home. And so I am staring at the shelf. I'm almost frozen, like really not sure what to do, because I couldn't justify buying it, but I had this like incredible urge to buy it. And so I'm staring, I'm looking at it, I'm calculating if I have 12 rolls, it's maybe 12 weeks, maybe it's 10 weeks. I don't really know. If we're home a lot, it seems like a long time. Should I get one? Should I get not? And my husband comes over and he just looks at me, looks at the toilet paper. He sees me staring at the toilet paper and he says, "What are you doing?" I'm like, I think I need toilet paper. I don't know why. I think I need it. And he very logically, which is his personality, says, well, we don't. And of course, a whole other side of me got triggered at that point about who's smarter and who knows more, and you better not make me feel stupid. You know, but it turned into this like emotional experience staring. It's the only one I can think of at a Duane Reade. And I look at him, I'm like, what's going to happen if we run out of toilet paper? And he said, I don't know, we'll just like take paper towels and put them in water. Like, come on, let's go. And, you know, of course, that's the voice of reason. That's the rational voice there telling me. But was so surprised by my experience there, because there was all this emotion inside of me about, did I do the right thing? Am I taking care of my family? Am I going to look stupid? That came up for me. And so I thought about that, and then I talked to friends and colleagues and clients about, like, so what's the deal with toilet paper? Why is everyone buying toilet paper? And it was so interesting, the response that I got. Mostly people would laugh and go, yeah, it's crazy, but I bought some. And so I'm like, well, why? Like, how many did you buy? And, you know, it turned into 25 rolls, 50 rolls. Every time I go, I buy. And I really wanted to know why. I really, you know, it's part of my qualitative upbringing. I really wanted to know, you know, why are we hoarding toilet paper? Not just buying, you know, one or two, but like, why is all this happening? And these kinds of questions where I'm not sure what I'm going to get out of it are my favorite. You know, I'll tell you a little bit about myself so you have some context, but my background, I would say right now, it's this combination of design research and entrepreneurship and creativity. You know, bringing these three things together is what I do. It's what I love to do. And so when a question like this comes up, and when the psychology of people is changing so rapidly, like it is right now, I mean, my fascination and my curiosity goes sky high. So we'll share what we did, what we found, and, you know, I'll start a little bit with me. So by background, I kind of fell into research. I have a human factors degree. And in the degree, you did learn how to do research, but it was primarily observational. You know, most of the work that we did was ethnography, like shop-alongs or ride-alongs, to really observe how people interact in environments. And my first job was at NASA, helping to redesign spaces like the Hubble Space Telescope control room. And it was very clear to me, you know, when I asked people questions about what they wanted or how they wanted things organized, even the smartest people, arguably in the world, you know, people who work at NASA, weren't quite sure what they wanted. But I could see where things weren't working for them, where there were workarounds, where they were taking too long to do something, where there were a lot of errors. And so my experience and my background in research is primarily in this realm of observation, and not necessarily asking questions, though of course I have done that. There's surveys and, you know, everything quantitative and qualitative, but the thing that gets me excited, I would say, is really listening and observing, and not having any hypothesis, and being in that pre-discovery phase. So that's where I've spent my time, you know, from this time, which is about 1998 and on. Most of my background has been in research. I was a research associate, then a research scientist, moved up to a project director. And I share that with you because I only got to do research for a couple years early on in my career. And then most of my career has been spent explaining to people why they need to do research a certain way, you know, and project directing was the beginning of that. And, you know, since then I've moved more and more into the business of research and why we do it, when we do it, how to do it so that we have the information that we need. And the last 10 years, since I started Motivate Design, 11 years, whoa, since I started Motivate Design, it's the research and this entrepreneurship that's come and blended together. You know, how much do I need to prove and how much do I need to learn? And I think those are two really cool and different spaces to play in. You know, how much am I going to follow my gut and how much do I need to see data? And entrepreneurship has really challenged some of the things that I learned and things that I thought I knew when it came to research because of time, money, resources. And so most of the thinking for the last 11 years has been how to create methods that work for the entrepreneurial thinking that we tend to work with. We do work with large clients, but they tend to want to do something new and different when they're working with us. And so the two methods that I'll talk about today, we did the second one, but this is like the mother of the second one, the one that came with the predecessor of the one that we'll talk about today. One was friendship groups, which I'm sure you all are doing some version of. We started doing them about 8 years ago. And it was a method where we asked one respondent to bring two friends or family members into an experience with us. And most of these were done in person, though we're now figuring out how to do them on Zoom. But they would come into a room and we would conduct design thinking activities with them. And it was the interaction between people that we were really fascinated with. And the kinds of questions that we used friendship groups for were a little different. And the interaction gave us a different lens into the answer. So one of the first ones were how high net worth people think about saving money. And what they actually need to see on their mobile banking platform. So again, remember 8 years ago, this is all fairly new. And what rich people tell rich people is very different than what rich people tell a researcher. And that's what we learned in doing that. You know, they open up and there's some funny jokes and there's some things that they wouldn't want to share because they don't want to be judged that came out of the friendship groups. So really fascinating. Another one was working with Chick-fil-A and launching the New York Chick-fil-A branch. And, you know, this is at a time where there were some values that were being discussed. And, you know, what's the role of that? You know, when you have a very strong founder and a CEO expressing a set of values, how does that play into your likelihood or not, or unlikelihood to visit a particular brand's experience? And a friendship group was a really great method for that. So, you know, doing these a couple times for many years, we picked up on this magic that happens when people who know each other connect with one another and they talk to one another, and what comes out of that. I want to say, before we go on, I'll probably say it a couple of times, it's not that this is finding something that's better than traditional research. Many times I am telling clients I actually think an interview is better than a friendship group or what we're going to talk about with Insider Insight. But when you want to hear that interaction between two people who know each other, it's a really fascinating methodology to use. And again, if you have questions on that, I'm happy to answer them. Just chat them over and we'll cover those towards the end. The method that we did use for what we're about to talk about is Insider Insight. So this method is only 3 years old. It's still a toddler. And it came about as a faster and cheaper way to do friendship groups. You know, the way Insider Insight works is we have a network of people that we go to, and these people are activated on finding truth. You know, they're really excited about having conversations with people in their life. We give them a topic. It's a topic that's broad, but a very limited number of questions that go with this topic. And we ask them to go and talk about it. So, for example, in this case, it's find someone who bought more than 25 rolls of toilet paper and just find out why. Like, what were they thinking? How was that going? No judgment, no like larger protocol from there, no real recruiting screener. You know, literally it was find somebody who you know who bought 25 or more rolls of toilet paper at once and have a conversation with them. Where this fits in the overall process is we like it very much in the pre-discovery. Like before I decide what questions I want to ask in an interview, or before I decide what questions I want to include in a survey, this method kind of slots right in there. It doesn't replace anything that you're currently doing. For some entrepreneurs, I think it has, but you know, other than that, I think the only thing it replaces is not doing research. But for the most part, it's really complementary, and you'll see, I think, in just a moment what I mean. Why I like this method. You know, like I told you from the NASA days, I have been trained essentially to be in the wild. You know, I like being where people are in their homes, in their workplaces, and seeing all of the context around them and how that influences the behavior that they have. And that's the way we've done qualitative. But recently, with some of the projects that we were doing, I would say maybe 5 or 6 years ago, when ethnography started to become less and less of the work that we were hired to do, I think it moved in-house or was being skipped because it took a long time. I wanted to figure out a way to still get that quality of data, but without bringing people into what I call the zoo, you know, the one-way mirror room or an interaction with us even. And again, this was inspired from the friendship groups where I know people act a little differently when their friends are around. I know it anecdotally, you know, having done it for the 8 years. And so I was trying to replicate that magic, but in a quicker way. And that's where we came up with Insider Insight, where we have people who are already on the ground and they can have conversations with frontline workers right now because maybe they're married to them, or it's their father, or it's their child, or it's their, you know, they can have conversations with people who got laid off. We were just asked to do a project to ask about what a bad layoff is. And instantly, like within an hour, 25 people said, I know people and I can have a conversation within the next 24 hours. So it's incredibly fast because our insiders are already in the wild and they connect us to the people we want to study in the wild, recording conversations and sending them back to us for our analysis. And remember, it doesn't replace an interview. It's not even an interview. It's a conversation. And you'll hear some of that in just a moment. So let's dig into the topic. And again, if you have any questions on my background or our approach to research or how we did the research, stick them all in the chat. I'll definitely make sure I answer those either during the session or if I have to after. I'm happy to do that. So COVIDiots. Yeah, I just saw this and it is such a perfect little meme that went through my Instagram. But one of the definitions that this person came up with, I wish I was smart enough to have come up with this, a person who's ignoring social distancing protocols, which we are all not. We're here in our quarantine and learning, which is awesome. And then a stupid person who hoards groceries, needlessly spreading COVID-19 fears, depriving others of vital supplies. See that guy with the 200 toilet paper rolls? That's a COVIDiot. So what is this about? Why are people buying toilet paper? And more importantly, why are they buying so much of it, and hoarding it? That was the question that we wanted to answer. And before I dig into how we answered it, I think it's always fun to put this in the context in your own mental makeup around how you would normally answer this. So if a client asked you, like, I want to know why people did this, what method would you use? Would it be a survey? Would it be a focus group? Would it be an in-depth interview? Kind of think that through, because that's something I'm curious about as well. Again, add it into the chat because I am curious what this is anchoring against. For us, this felt very much like an Insider Insight project because we don't know why, we don't know who did it, we don't know why we don't know who they were with, we don't know what else they bought. There's so many things that we can hear in this story that we don't want to close it in quite yet. We want to keep it broad, and that's one of the criteria that we use for figuring out if something is good for Insider Insight. So some of the things that we found here, and what I've done is I just pulled 5 quotes for us to look at. Remember, this is only 5 people, and I would say our general Insider Insight projects are 10 people, so it's really small samples. And when a client wants to do more, we encourage them to do 10, see what comes up, and then make sure that we're still asking the same question for the next 10. Sometimes we are, and it's completely fine, and we brought in our sample. Sometimes we learn something a little differently, a little different about what we want to study. Maybe we fine tune or figure we should be using a different word, and that's really valuable because we were off in a direction and we got course corrected fairly quickly. So in this one, it's Kim who says, in a world of uncertainty where every day the world is changing, normal existence is no longer normal. Can't go work, can't go out, and there's so much uncertainty. Favorite part here, gosh darn it, if having toilet paper gives me a little bit of relief from this insanity, then I'm gonna have toilet paper. If I have 15 cans of cream corn that I don't even like in the pantry and it makes a little bit of comfort in a very uncomfortable world right now, so be it. And so from here, you'll see that because we're not in an interview, we can't probe. We can't go in deeper to understand this, that, and the other. This is almost exactly what happens when we're looking at transcripts and listening to audio from Insider Insight, where we hear what they talked about, and what it does is it opens up more questions. So what new curiosity comes from this quote for you? For me, I had written it down because I knew I'd be going super fast today. Somehow I can't find it. Oh, like, what does she mean by extreme uncertainty? What's not changing in her world? What's changing too fast in her world? What does fast mean in her world? What makes things uncomfortable? What still feels comfortable? What things do they do? What things does Kim do, whether she's comfortable or not? When was the last time she was uncomfortable? What does she do then? What can she learn from what she did then? 15 cans of cream corn, like, more please on that. So many things we could probe into, we can understand more. So what Insider Insight and some of these things that we'll be talking about today do is it opens up more questions. And those questions are the ones that we then put into a more structured interview guide or into the survey. But already from here, we're hearing about her need for control, her need for comfort, and her need to put things in her home that give her a sense of sanity and comfort and ease. And that's what this was about for her. It wasn't about the toilet paper. It was about relieving that ease. And it sounds very much like my personal story, right? And how I felt this anxiety come up just by seeing the toilet paper. And the toilet paper signaled everything that I was seeing on social media and hearing at work coming to life right in front of me. Following the herd, especially when stressed. So yeah, she started it, and then everyone else started talking about toilet paper. And this was like the bigger discussion that they had in the workplace. And before I knew it, I got swept up. I gotta move all these pictures. I got swept up, and then I panicked. Man, I panicked. Again, what curiosity does this bring up for you? I am fascinated about this panic, and I want to know like more about these feelings that were going on and why she called it panic and why the panic even happened in the first place. So hopefully you're starting to see already, yes, we're seeing that it was other people having this conversation that led her to feel like, oh my God, and in panic mode, fight or flight, I go out and I just do. I am not thinking as much. And you remember that story, right? My emotional, my rational were at odds with one another. When we're in survival mode, we're going to go with the thing that makes us feel better. We just heard about that in the previous session as well at 2:00 with Marcus. So, what does panic mean, and really diving into that. And it's not about toilet paper. It's about what other things are causing us panic and how do we know and deal with panic? That is the more interesting question. We protect, and it's really about survival of the fittest is another finding that came out. This one I'm going to play. Give me a second to organize this. Sorry, I was playing around with the slides and moved them. So I just have to play it from here. Please.
Fear of store.
Oh, sorry, before I play that. There's two things I want to have you listen for. One is, of course, what he says. He is a respondent. He's a person that we're studying who went out and bought more than 25 rolls of toilet paper. But there's another component that for those of you who have a research background, which I'm assuming many of you do, might geek out with me on. Remember, these are relationships that already exist. And so part of what we're doing is leveraging that. And of course there's bias. Of course there's bias between two people who know each other having a conversation about a topic that we want to study. But this is a conversation that we think of it more, less like we're bringing the conversation to us and more like we're getting a seat at their table. So this is a husband and wife, which you'll, I think, be able to tell pretty quickly in the interaction. And you'll hear that she does not, I don't know what that was. You will hear that she does not ask questions in an open and non-leading way. She does cut him off. She does laugh at something that he says. Obviously, these are things that we would definitely not do if we were running a study in a lab. But you'll see kind of what happens as a result of that natural interaction.
Doors being closed and not having the access to the toilet paper, or the fear of seeing everyone else buying the toilet paper and realizing there may not be any left for you that drove you to buy
just the
copious
fear that
amounts?
there wouldn't be any left for me. And I'd rather buy everything that I can to keep my household at a status quo. Because in a circumstance like what's going on now, you kind of have to look out for yourself.
But what about the people who maybe were in line behind you that needed toilet paper? Did you think about anybody else? What was racing through your mind when you...
I saw the people in front of me had large amounts of toilet paper. I saw in my car that I had large amounts. I wasn't looking behind me. Everyone says don't live in the past, and looking in your rear view mirror is kind of frowned upon, so I was looking straight ahead.
It's a bit literal.
Yeah. But if you think about it, if toilet paper is being coveted so much, and I bought a lot, never know, what if it turns south? This whole thing turns worse than we thought it would, and now there's no more toilet paper. Now you can use toilet paper as a barter system.
It's a barter system?
Yeah. For real. Like,
I'm not laughing. For
yeah.
real. Barter for what?
For food. Okay, I said you can hunt for food. Cool. But what if there's necessities you can't hunt for? Now you can trade toilet paper for...
I just think...
So, the interaction itself, I think, is actually even more interesting than the finding. But the finding here, you never know. You never know. And in the previous session, we even talked a little bit about risk averse in domain gains and risk seeking in domains of loss. You know, this was in some cases, well, actually there's so many here, right? But in some cases it was like, I have to look out for myself, which is one of the findings. If toilet paper is coveted, you just never know. It could be a barter. I could use it to make money. I could use it to sell. But there's like this moment of like, I'm just going to be smarter than everybody else, that he has a little bit later on. And it kind of progresses even through the rest of the transcript. It's about 15 minutes. All the conversations are about 10 or 15 minutes. But it progresses even further to like, I'm not going to be the idiot that doesn't have any. And that's what this was about. You know, it was really about survival for me and my family, but also power and status and not being left behind. Let me switch this back over. All right. So a few more. We blame social media. Sorry, I don't know why that's happening. I saw Facebook friends in the US, for example, who were saying they didn't know where to get toilet paper. They needed some, they couldn't find any. And then what were they going to wipe their asses with? That could have been us, you know. I wonder actually if someone's going to figure out the social media paper trail. So they were talking about like, who started this? Somebody started this and it's all their fault earlier on in the conversation. And figure out how did this thing domino and focus on toilet paper. I think you've nailed it. I think that's what it is. So this whole conversation was about being duped. And it was like some person, like there was a hoax and there was like this little thing that they said that there's no toilet paper, and then all of us believed it. And it's really all social media's fault. The rest, there's like a good 6 minutes that goes into how this is all social media's fault and how we should really be verifying and validating some of the things that we see before. Facebook should be verifying and validating the things that are posted by other people before this person sees it. And so this is one of the things also, again, I'm giving you the findings, but I'm hopefully also giving you a little bit of insight into how to do insider insight. Conversations will go all over the place. They're not linear and they don't follow the protocol structure that we might be used to in a research guide, but that is the point. Like this conversation, Evelyn felt like a victim, and it was coming, and a victim in a lot of things that were happening, you know. She actually did another session, another conversation for us, and got laid off, and you could hear it again in some of the conversation that she had there. Everything was not her fault, and toilet paper, she now had too much and felt kind of stupid for having it. And so you can, you know, we asked the question, why did you buy toilet paper? But the richness that existed in getting the answer to that is what I thought was just so beautiful about using this method to answer it. And then the last one is it was a way to attain power. And we alluded to that a little bit with the barter system. And so this was a conversation that Kim had. It's part of a larger issue where Kim was going to work. Everyone else is buying toilet paper, and she's like, "This is kind of crazy, guys. Like, I don't really need toilet paper." And then day 2, day 3, day 4, where everyone's like, "Kim doesn't have toilet paper. Kim didn't get toilet paper." And you'll see here, she says, like, I'm going to have to be the one that, like, the only one without toilet paper. I have to go beg all my friends. I'm not going to be that person. Kim, did you get toilet paper? No, Kim didn't get the toilet paper. And it was like this big joke that was happening where she felt like she wasn't like in the smarter group and everyone else is doing something. And so she then convinced herself, you know what, I think you're right. I should control the little bit that I can control. I hear you guys. I'm going to go out and I'm going to get it. So fascinating conversation, because in her case, similar to my husband, you know, rationality was winning up front. And then it just, the fear of being wrong, the fear of not having it versus the gain of like having extra toilet paper that doesn't go bad, so who cares in my house, is all they were thinking about. No one, by the way, is thinking about supply chain or, you know, anything or just the panic that this would induce in general for anyone else. It was only about me. It was only about, do I have what I need to feel good about, you know, going through this uncertain time. So typically what comes next, like insider insight rarely is, it's not one of those things that you do one-off as a project, and it never was intended to be. It's a source of data, and the data happens to be conversations. And like I mentioned, for the most part, we would now go out and do structured interviews, or we would do something more quantitative to validate some of these things that we found, like was it about panic or was it about, you know, X, Y, or Z. So typically there is a research component that comes as a 1-2 punch with insider insight, but not always. Sometimes some of our clients have said, I don't see this as much as a type of method that I add to my toolkit, which is the way I've thought of it. It's more a drip of information that I'd like to have ongoing. And so sometimes I want to know about my competitor, sometimes I want to know about flowers, sometimes I want to know about hair color. And I have different questions, and I want to keep asking questions and getting conversations coming through about these topics, and then I'll decide what turns into a project. That, again, wasn't my idea, but I do like it. I think it's a smart way to go. And then I alluded to this earlier, a third thing that tends to happen after insider insight, less in the researcher community, more in the entrepreneur community or the design community or product, is they start prototyping. So this is called a research sprint, and it feeds directly into a design sprint. And they will validate after the design sprint, usually. I don't know. Maybe I should take that usually back. But the validation would come after the design sprint. And so it really depends on the culture of the organization, the budgets, the timelines, what comes next. But rarely are we saying like, insider insight, you have everything you need, go ahead. I definitely would not say that. But one of the things that I think has happened in every case that we've done, and I can share more cases if it's something you all want to hear, is this increase in curiosity. You know, this, I wonder what she meant by, or I wonder if he would have done it this way, or wonder what he thinks about X. And that is dream for me. You know, I think a lot of times when we're working on projects, we are up against such tight timelines and such tight deadlines that we're going back to this proving mindset. Like, let's just check this off, figure out what we need to know, make sure we're right, move ahead. And my interest has always been in the learning, the discovery, the exploration, the what are the things that I didn't think of. And to me, that is what insight means. And so, you know, the more, I don't want to say the more I confuse you, but I kind of mean the more I confuse you, you know, the more questions that come up for people as a result of doing this particular method, I think the more successful the method was. So I've ended, I'm done with like the presentation component. Like I said, I want to make sure that we have time for questions. So I believe this will be a moderated component, but I can also just read the chat if we need. Erica, whatever you want.
Yeah, so thank you, Mona. That was so interesting. Really interesting to hear what other people are saying, because obviously this is I mean, I'm thinking about it a lot. Why are we buying so much toilet paper? So that was so interesting to hear. It doesn't look like we have any questions right now. A little bit of chatter in the chat about people just really reacting positively to this. I know you mentioned you have a couple other things you could dive into. Is there any one that you want to?
Yeah, no, I'm happy to. I mean, this method has been like, it's just been really fun to create it. It's been really fun to use it. So one of my favorite ones was on gun control and why people, so we're working with the Ad Council to help them figure out why people keep guns loaded but unlocked in homes with kids. And so they had already done a whole round of amazing research before and found that there's one statistic that really resonated with this group, which is that 8 kids die per day because of guns in homes that are locked and unloaded. So, you know, and that campaign wasn't getting the lift that they wanted. So they wanted to see, is there anything else that we're missing? Is there anything else that we could learn? So we did the Insider Insight project. So again, 10 conversations. I think we might have done a little bit more there. And that's all we asked. Why? You know, how do you store your gun? And what is the rationale for doing it? And by the way, I think just asking it that way was part of the secret sauce. You know, there's no judging there. It's just like, tell me what you do and tell me why you do it that way. And the interesting component is that we had some insiders were also gun owners. And, you know, sometimes in doing research, the researcher's the subconscious and unconscious influence is there. And, you know, perhaps this little addition of having 2 gun owners having a conversation also made a huge difference. But what we found is the 8 kids die a day was actually not resonant in the conversations. It's one of those things that they're like, and then cameras off. And when they're talking to their brother, they're talking to a friend, they're like, I hate that statistic. I hate it because it implies that I'm not a good parent. Do you think that my kid is not going to listen to me? I told my kid, this is a gun, don't touch the gun. And I put it right in front of them, and my kids always listen to me. So if you're telling me I need to lock this gun away, you're basically implying I'm not a good parent. And that what I have done, which is teach my kids good gun safety, is not worked, or I'm not doing a great job. So there was like this very strong reaction that came from 2 people having the conversation about this. And like, again, I don't know how we would have found it. You know, even if I came off as a person who had a gun or supported guns, or, you know, like even if I blinded that whole thing, I think they wouldn't have told me. And that's where it gets really interesting. But now that I know it, what we did is we went back into the survey and we asked, like, what do you think about this? Is any of this offensive? So when we ask it more directly, they're able to say, yeah, actually it is. Thanks for asking. You know, but like rated on a scale of 1 to 5 wasn't going to get it.
Right. Yeah. It's almost like you're getting, you never want to ask biased questions, but now we're getting the right targeted questions.
Yes. Yes.
All right. Now we've had a bunch of questions come in, which is great. We have one from an anonymous attendee. What has been the customer response to insight groups? Was there pushback on the informality, the value of findings, sample size concerns, et cetera?
Yes, 100%. Unfortunately, researchers were my toughest crowd. You know, so the people who really resonated with this method, I'm talking about 3 years ago, and then we'll talk about now. Up front, researchers had a really hard time. Even the researchers that worked at Motivate had a really hard time with this because we're used to control. We're used to a recruiting screener that tells me exactly who I'm going to speak to, and a moderator's guide that tells me exactly the order in which I'm going to ask questions. And so this is just like, good luck and send me an audio. Which did not resonate for a lot of people. I actually had to turn over quite a few researchers to ones that were more design thinking oriented than more traditional while I was creating this, because it was really hard to do. Yes, absolutely. It's completely new. The mistake I made is I treated it like a standalone method early on. Like it was a thing that you could do and then you would have an answer. And what I've learned along the way is it's a thing that you can do to ask a better question. And that is an important learning that I didn't have when I first launched it.
Yeah, great. We have one from Susan. She says she's met you a few years back. It's nice to hear you speak about insider insight and how that informs next research steps. Do you look to follow up with the same people from insider insight sessions or use outputs from those sessions to shape questions, which I think you've touched on?
We've done both. Yeah, the second one is more common, but we do have this like 1-2 punch that we do where we'll do insider insights and then inevitably like they'll want to talk to Evelyn. You know, and so we'll go back and say, Evelyn, can we schedule a one-on-one with you with a researcher? Because again, the insiders are not researchers. You know, they're people who are connectors. They're bridges to people that we know. They have, like as you heard, you know, they have a really hilarious conversation sometimes where you're like, what are you saying? But that's what they say. That's what's happening that's exactly what's happening at their dinner table. Mm-hmm. And so we'll pull them out and do something more structured. So yes to both. And every combination in between there, actually.
Yeah, another question along with Susan's is, do you also use that, like what you find in the insider insight sessions, do you use that to inform who your target audience is for that specific project and also for other projects?
It's probably too small of a sample, but it has been helpful to validate or disprove actually some of the hypotheses and personas. Like for example, I can't talk about a lot of the details, but right now we're doing a project where a healthcare company split their user groups into 2, and they're like people who believe this and people who believe that, you know, and they're opposites. And so we ask people, like, if you believe this, have a conversation about this. If you believe that, have a conversation about that. And I just got the findings today, and actually this is not accurate. It's, I used to believe this, and then now I believe that, but it changes every day. And that's huge. Like, so, you know, that kind of stuff happens where it's not like, here's your new segment, but, oh, I was thinking too black and white about who my demographics and psychographics are. And this is unveiling like a layer that I didn't think about. That happens a lot.
Cool. Yeah. We're getting a couple of questions about kind of the logistics side of this. So how you're instructing participants or these insiders, how they're being compensated, what incentives are you offering, things like that. So can you dive
The incentives honestly depend on the project and how quickly we need to get it back for the client and how hard it is for us to get people. Like this layoff one, it's kind of really sad to me, but everybody knows like 3 to 5 people who got laid off. And so that one, like our incentives don't have to be as high. It's kind of market defined. We are working on that. So I might have a different answer in a couple weeks on that one. And like how it works, the instructions. So remember, this is the hardest part. This took us a year to figure out. So like, now I feel great that I figured it out, but like it took a long time for me to get my head around a conversation versus an interview. You don't need to instruct people on how to have a conversation. They're human. They know how to have a conversation. So like, I don't need to tell you how to have a conversation with your best friend. I just need to tell you to have a conversation about your best friend. And the more I tell you, the more it's not going to be a real conversation. Mm-hmm. So again, took a year for me to figure out to shut up. Like just have a conversation about the layoff. Have a conversation about, whether you're buying toilet paper or not. Have a conversation about, what's another one that's coming up? The new entertainment, like what you bought for your home to be in your home and be isolated. Like what new things did you bring in to make that isolation easier? Right. And like, I don't need to now say like, was it electronic advice? Was it kitchen? Was it like, I don't need all that. Which means that some transcripts are trash from a researcher perspective. I would encourage you, if you do these projects with us, like we do transcripts only. So we're just providing the data to researchers and then the researchers analyze it. We can help you analyze it, but like it's way cheaper if you just analyze it yourself. So when you're looking through, really make sure that trash is trash. Sometimes trash is just stuff you didn't feel like hearing. And that's also been something that we figured out. But the insiders have a conversation and that's it.
Yeah, less is more, it sounds like, and from that standpoint.
Lessons learned. Before we had protocols, and it was like one of the worst interviews you've ever heard in your life. And it was like, hi, tell me about your diabetes. Like it ruined it, versus just like, go talk about diabetes and see what happens.
Yeah. All right, we have one question from Tracy Fields. She wants to know, can you talk more about the atmosphere of a friendship group gathering to collect insights? How would you introduce it? Oh, we've kind of talked about this. What type of invite do you send to get?
Yeah. Okay, so I love the friendship groups, and it's going to change a lot now. Like it's good. So they were all in person before. We have already started piloting remote ones, so I'll tell you about both. The in-person ones, what we found is if it feels like a party, they open up and it's like, I can't believe we're getting paid to hang out. That's what we were shooting for. So we would do it in back rooms at restaurants. We would do it in like really cool loft places. A lot of the first ones we did were for a high-end bank. And so part of what we were also doing is fitting in with the brand of the bank and making sure that, when we invited ultra high net worth people, it was not like to a focus group facility. It was to like a penthouse. And so that was really important. The Chick-fil-A ones we did in the back of the restaurant, which was also really cool. And so the space is a part of the experience, which is going to be tricky as we pivot and figure out new things here. So you're coming in with your friends. So we recruit one person, and then the person that we recruit, we ask them to bring 2 people that meet a persona criteria that we're also interested in studying. So someone who manages their money really well, someone who never thinks about their money, and someone who has had type 2 diabetes for a long time, someone who just got diagnosed, someone who beat cancer, someone who has not beat cancer quite yet and is going through chemo, and you. And so all of those are what we're looking for. And again, you can imagine the space has changed dramatically based on what the project is. We used to book them for 3 hours and just give them a break and all of that. It's a lot. It's a lot. So 2 hours is what we're shooting for, which goes so fast. So I wish we could get the 3, but people just don't sign on for the 3. And it's the environment is very much, you're not a moderator, you're a facilitator. And so you introduce what we're doing, but they're driving. And if they want to spend more time collaging something or doing a what if session or, doing creative writing exercise, then you modify quickly in the session. and you let them feel like they're in control of the experience. We've had clients join. So we've had, like 3 respondents and 3 clients, or 6 respondents and 6 clients. Those have been really interesting. I would not call those friendship groups as we've traditionally done them. They're like some other steroids version of it. But it was, that was also like a variation that worked really, really well. So we had clients and customers go out, do field trips, and come back and talk about it.
Yeah, all that sounds so interesting.
Yeah. This is, I mean, again, it's a very niche, I guess, kind of research, but I'm weirdly excited about what will happen after everything that's happening right now, because I think people are changing so different, like people are changing a lot, and we don't know how when it comes to each brand. And so I do think it's a really great time to be a researcher, whatever research, whether you're doing behavioral economics, which was fascinating, or you're doing this kind of design, more innovation-y research like what we're talking about here, or traditional quant. All of it is really exciting because nobody knows what people want now.
Right, yeah. All right, it looks like we have one more question from Wes Edwards. He says, apologies if this was already mentioned, but is there a deck or a list of resources for those that want to try their hand at this?
Well, I mean, we do it, so not really. There's a master class that's available if you want to like take a class and learn how to do it. But no, this is like not really this. I mean, we could put this deck up if that's what you mean. Or I could definitely talk to you about how to do it if it's something that you want to try and there's transcripts that you want us to provide. But like this is essentially our bread and butter and what Motivate is doing primarily these days.
Yeah. Oh, more questions.
Yeah, I know. This is cool. This is fun.
Oh, Jason wants to know, will all of these presentations be available to view after the webinars end? Absolutely.
Yeah,
We're recording all of them and we'll be posting them after the conference is over, so that everyone, if you've been able to attend all, if you haven't, they'll be available. If
you guys want it, I have this webinar I did. It's like an hour long, but it really digs into the methodology. And Russ, I was obviously joking. It digs into the methodology, and that one might be a good add-on for this. I'll try to dig that up and send it to you all.
Great, yeah. Oh, Susan has a suggestion about the friend groups, how you've had to move them virtual. She said, what if you employed the meeting room feature of Zoom to facilitate?
Yep, that's what we're doing. Yeah, Susan, exactly. So that's exactly it. And so the other thing that we're adding in, so remember, it's supposed to feel like this party, this thing that I would have done anyway. And so when we did the Zoom as if it was like a research study, which is just like, we just go back to that because it's what we know and, not the right way to go, but just say, we're talking about safety and fear throughout the whole session today. And we did it that way, and it just felt like a focus group again. Mm-hmm. So what we need to figure out is how to infuse more fun and more lightness into that Zoom meeting. So we're already playing with like, maybe it's a virtual background that we're requiring everyone to do as the first activity, or, could we do it over drinks, or could we, so we're trying to throw in whatever could make this feel like I would do this anyway. That is the criteria for the friendship group, that the respondents leave and really feel like this lightness towards whatever brand we were talking about.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, great. All right, I think we got all of the questions.
Cool.
That was so interesting.
Thanks.
Thank you so much for your time, Mona. I enjoyed it so much. I learned a lot. I hope everyone else did too.
I hope so too.
And it looks like there was some interest on the resources you were talking about. So I'm sure everyone will be in touch if they want to get that information.
Yeah, totally.
Thank you so much. Have a great rest of your day.